Rome in 54 AD. The Eternal City stood at a crossroads as Claudius, the emperor who had brought stability after Caligula's chaos, lay dead, possibly poisoned by his own wife, Agrippina the Younger. In his place rose Nero, a 16-year-old boy, adopted son of Claudius and the last hope of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. The dynasty, founded by Augustus, had ruled Rome for nearly a century, surviving the grim reign of Tiberius, the madness of Caligula, and the unlikely brilliance of Claudius. But now, with Nero on the throne, the cracks in this illustrious lineage were about to widen into an unbridgeable chasm. Nero's reign began with promise, but beneath the surface, ambition, betrayal, and madness were brewing. Welcome to the final chapter of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the rise and fall of Nero, Rome's most infamous emperor. Nero, born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus in 37 AD, was the son of Agrippina the Younger and Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, a Roman noble. Agrippina, Caligula's sister and Claudius's final wife, had maneuvered tirelessly to secure the throne for her son. She persuaded Claudius to adopt Nero, placing him above Britannicus, Claudius's biological son, in the line of succession. Agrippina's ambition knew no bounds. She eliminated rivals, controlled the court, and ensured Nero was groomed for power under the tutelage of Seneca, a renowned philosopher, and Burrus, the loyal commander of the Praetorian Guard. From a young age, Nero displayed a passion for the arts, particularly music and poetry, a rare trait for someone of Roman imperial lineage, where stoicism and military prowess were valued above all else. When Claudius died in 54 AD under suspicious circumstances, Agrippina wasted no time. She concealed his death, rallied support for Nero, and declared him emperor before Britannicus could pose a threat. Nero's early reign, often called the Quinquennium Neronis, the first 5 years, was a golden period for Rome. Guided by Seneca and Burrus, Nero enacted moderate policies. He lowered taxes, improved judicial fairness, and hosted lavish festivals to win the people's favor. He also promoted culture, sponsoring poets and artists, and even organizing poetry competitions in the Roman Forum, where he often participated himself, impressing the populace with his enthusiasm. Culturally, Nero sought to craft a new image for a Roman emperor. He funded theaters, built new venues like the Theater of Nero, and encouraged the development of art forms such as drama and music, a move warmly received by the lower classes, plebeians, who loved public performances. Economically, Nero began by granting tax exemptions to certain provinces and easing financial burdens on the people, a policy that initially earned him widespread popularity. In particular, Nero frequently organized distributions of free grain and chariot races at the Circus Maximus, winning strong support from the lower classes, who saw him as an emperor close to the people. In stark contrast to the cold demeanor of Tiberius or the instability of Caligula, the Senate, battered by Caligula's cruelty and Claudius's reliance on freedmen, found Nero's approach refreshing. Agrippina, though, loomed large over her son's reign. She appeared on coins alongside Nero, an unprecedented honor for an empress mother, and influenced key decisions. The people of Rome, eager for stability after Claudius, initially embraced Nero as a young, charismatic leader who could carry forward Augustus's legacy. But Agrippina's control and Nero's own unstable nature would soon unravel this fragile harmony. Nero's early years brought hope to Rome, but the shadow of Agrippina and his own inner darkness were growing. Could this young emperor escape his mother's grip and lead Rome to glory, or would his reign take a darker turn? Let's explore the unraveling of Nero's rule. Rome in 55 AD. Nero's reign had begun with promise, but the harmony of the Quinquennium Neronis was fleeting. Beneath the surface, tensions were brewing between Nero and Agrippina, whose ambition to control her son clashed with Nero's growing desire for independence. Nero, now 17, was no longer the obedient boy Agrippina had molded. He was a young man with a flair for the arts, a love for extravagance, and a temper that would soon reveal itself. This chapter of Nero's reign marks the beginning of his descent that would see him break free from Agrippina, but at a terrible cost to Rome and the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Nero's relationship with Agrippina deteriorated rapidly. Agrippina, accustomed to wielding power through her son, became overbearing. She interfered in state affairs, demanded a role in Nero's decisions, and even threatened to support Britannicus if Nero defied her. Nero, feeling stifled, began to resent her dominance. Seneca and Burrus, sensing Agrippina's influence as a threat to their own authority, encouraged Nero to assert himself. In 55 AD, Nero took a drastic step. He ordered the poisoning of Britannicus, Claudius's 14-year-old son, during a banquet. Britannicus, seen as a potential rival, collapsed after drinking tainted wine, dying in front of the court. Nero claimed it was an epileptic seizure, but few believed him. Agrippina was horrified not out of love for Britannicus, but because she realized Nero was slipping from her control. Britannicus's death was not just a cruel act, but also sparked discontent among the nobility. A minor conspiracy was recorded in 56 AD, when a group of senators quietly sought to overthrow Nero and install another member of the Julio-Claudian family. But the plot was quickly uncovered and crushed, with its leaders executed without mercy. Nero's break from Agrippina reached its climax in 59 AD. By then, Nero had grown infatuated with Poppaea Sabina, a noblewoman of stunning beauty and ambition. Poppaea, eager to become empress, urged Nero to rid himself of Agrippina and his current wife, Octavia, Claudius's daughter. Agrippina, sensing her influence waning, opposed the relationship, warning Nero that divorcing Octavia would anger the Roman people, who cherished her as Claudius's heir. Nero, enraged by Agrippina's interference, decided she had to die. He devised an elaborate plan, a collapsible boat designed to sink, staging her death as an accident. Agrippina survived the shipwreck and swam to shore, but Nero, undeterred, sent assassins to finish the job. Agrippina was stabbed to death in her villa, her last words reportedly a bitter lament. "Strike my womb, for it bore Nero." The murder of Agrippina marked a turning point in Nero's reign. Free from her control, Nero embraced his worst impulses. He divorced Octavia, accusing her of infertility, and married Poppaea in 62 AD. Octavia, beloved by the people, was exiled and later executed, a move that sparked outrage in Rome, particularly among the lower classes, who had admired Octavia for her kindness. Nero also began indulging in his love for the arts, performing as a musician and actor on public stages, a scandalous act for an emperor. He even organized large music competitions in Rome, where he always won not because of talent, but because the judges dared not rule against him. Though scorned by the elite, Nero's public performances were warmly received by the lower classes. They delighted in seeing an emperor take the stage, singing and playing the lyre, an unprecedented sight. The Roman elite, who valued stoic dignity, were appalled, but Nero cared little for their opinions. He saw himself as an artist, a godlike figure above mortal judgment. Meanwhile, Seneca and Burrus, once his stabilizing influences, lost their grip. Burrus died in 62 AD, possibly poisoned by Nero, and Seneca retired, leaving Nero unchecked. This period also saw instability in the provinces. In 60-61 AD, the rebellion of Boudica, queen of the Iceni tribe in Britannia, erupted, protesting Roman oppression after her husband's death and the seizure of native lands. The revolt devastated Roman cities like Londinium, modern-day London, and was only quelled after tens of thousands died, revealing Nero's failure to control distant provinces. In the east, Nero faced tensions with the Parthian Empire over control of Armenia. In 55 AD, Nero ordered an invasion of Armenia, leading to a prolonged war with Parthia, but he achieved little success. However, in 63 AD, a treaty was signed, placing Armenia under the rule of a pro-Roman king, Tiridates, who later traveled to Rome in 66 AD to formally receive his crown from Nero in a lavish ceremonious spectacle Nero used to flaunt his power, but which cost the Roman treasury an enormous sum. With Agrippina gone and his advisors sidelined, Nero's true nature emerged, plunging Rome into a new era of excess and cruelty. But an even greater disaster loomed on the horizon that would forever define his reign. Let's witness the catastrophe that shook Rome to its core. Rome in 64 AD. Nero's reign, once a beacon of hope, had descended into chaos. The murder of Agrippina and the execution of Octavia had alienated the Roman people, while Nero's obsession with the arts and his growing extravagance drained the treasury. But nothing could prepare Rome for the disaster that struck in July of that year, a catastrophe that would forever define Nero's legacy. The Great Fire of Rome, a blaze that consumed the city for 6 days, would mark the beginning of Nero's true descent into madness. As whispers of his involvement and his shocking response to the tragedy spread through the empire, the Great Fire began on the night of July 18, 64 AD, in the shops near the Circus Maximus. Fueled by wooden structures and strong summer winds, the flames spread rapidly, engulfing much of Rome. For 6 days and 7 nights, the city burned, destroying 10 of Rome's 14 districts. Thousands died, and countless more were left homeless. Ancient sources like Tacitus describe the horror. Screams filled the air as families fled, temples crumbled, and the Forum itself was threatened. Nero, who was in Antium when the fire broke out, returned to Rome as the crisis unfolded. Contrary to the popular myth that he fiddled while Rome burned, Nero did take action. He opened his palaces to shelter the homeless, distributed food, and organized relief efforts. This move initially earned him some goodwill from the lower classes, who felt he cared for them during the crisis. But that goodwill quickly evaporated as rumors of Nero's involvement in the fire spread. But Nero's response to the fire quickly turned sinister. Rumors spread that he had ordered the blaze to clear land for his grand project, the Domus Aurea lavish golden house that would span a third of Rome, complete with a colossal statue of himself. Tacitus notes that some claim to have seen men with torches preventing firefighters from extinguishing the flames, acting on Nero's orders. Whether true or not, the people's anger turned toward Nero. To deflect blame, Nero scapegoated the Christians, a small but growing religious sect in Rome. He accused them of arson, unleashing a brutal persecution. Christians were crucified, burned alive, or torn apart by wild beasts in the arena, grim spectacle that horrified even Rome's hardened citizens. Though criticized by the lower classes for this persecution, Nero tried to win them back by organizing free gladiatorial shows after the fire, where he appeared as a generous emperor. But this could not mask the growing divide between him and the populace. Nero also seized the opportunity to rebuild Rome in his own image. He constructed wide boulevards, new public buildings, and imposed stricter building codes to prevent future fires. However, these reforms did little to ease discontent, as the people believed they served only Nero's personal ambitions, particularly the Domus Aurea, for which he poured immense resources, including a statue over 30 meters tall known as the Colossus Neronis, depicting him as a sun god. To fund these extravagant projects, Nero implemented a controversial economic policy. He debased the Roman currency by reducing the silver content in the denarius, a practice known as debasement of currency. This allowed him to mint more coins for spending but triggered inflation, eroding the value of people's wealth and fueling resentment, especially in wealthy provinces like Egypt and Syria, where trade suffered heavily from the currency's devaluation. The Great Fire and its aftermath revealed Nero's true nature. The Domus Aurea, with its extravagant gardens, artificial lake, and gold-encrusted halls, became a symbol of his disconnect from the people. To fund the project, Nero raised taxes and confiscated wealth, further alienating the aristocracy in the provinces. His performances as a musician grew more frequent, and he forced the elite to attend, humiliating them with his self-indulgence. He also expanded his cultural policies. Nero established grand artistic festivals called the Neronia, first held in 60 AD and again in 65 AD, where artists from across the empire competed in poetry, music, and acting. While the Neronia was popular with the lower classes, the elite saw it as an affront to Roman tradition. In 65 AD, Nero caused further scandal by participating in the Olympic Games in Greece, where he delayed the event to fit his schedule and won every competition, from chariot racing to musical performance, thanks to intimidated or bribed opponents. He returned to Rome with over 1,800 prizes, parading through the city as a champion. But this only deepened the disdain of the nobility, who viewed an emperor competing in such events as a disgrace. Nero's paranoia also deepened. In 65 AD, he uncovered the Pisonian conspiracy, a plot by senators and nobles to assassinate him and replace him with Gaius Calpurnius Piso. Nero's response was ruthless. He executed dozens, including Seneca, who was forced to commit suicide despite questionable evidence of his involvement. The Pisonian conspiracy was not the only plot. Shortly after, another conspiracy was uncovered involving Fannius Rufus, a Praetorian Guard commander, and Subrius Flavus, a military officer, who openly expressed contempt for Nero, calling him a coward and a failed artist. Both were executed, and Nero's purges further fueled discontent within the military. foreshadowing his imminent downfall. Also in that year, a personal tragedy struck. Poppaea Sabina, Nero's beloved wife, died. Some sources claim that Nero, in a fit of rage, kicked Poppaea in the stomach while she was pregnant, causing her death. Nero fell into deep grief, holding a lavish funeral for Poppaea and even deifying her, but this act could not conceal his cruelty. The Great Fire had scarred Rome, but Nero's actions in its wake scarred his legacy even more. As his paranoia and cruelty grew, the empire began to crumble beneath him. Could Rome endure his reign, or was the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty near? Let's uncover Nero's final days. Rome in 68 AD. Nero's reign, now in its 14th year, had become a nightmare for the empire. The Great Fire of 64 had left Rome in ruins, both physically and morally. Nero's extravagance, his persecution of Christians, and his brutal suppression of the Pisonian conspiracy had turned the people, the Senate, and even the military against him. The Julio-Claudian dynasty, once a symbol of Rome's glory under Augustus, was crumbling under Nero's weight. This final chapter of Nero's story traces his downfall, a downfall that would mark the end of a dynasty and plunge Rome into chaos. Discontent had been brewing in the provinces for years. Nero's heavy taxes to fund the Domus Aurea and his lavish lifestyle strained the empire's resources. In 66 AD, the First Jewish-Roman War broke out in Judea, sparked by religious tensions and Roman oppression. Nero dispatched General Vespasian to crush the revolt, but the conflict drained Rome's coffers further. Other provinces also began showing unrest. In Gaul, the populace complained about increased taxes to fund Nero's extravagant ceremonies, such as the reception of Tiridates from Armenia. While in Spain and North Africa, local governors quietly began supporting Nero's potential rivals, feeling he was no longer fit for the throne. Even the lower classes in Rome, who had once supported Nero for his generosity in festivals and grain distributions, now turned against him, particularly after the Great Fire and his failed economic policies, which caused prices to soar and made their lives increasingly difficult. Meanwhile, provincial governors grew restless. Nero's eccentricities also escalated. After Poppaea's death, he married Sporus, a young boy whom he ordered castrated to serve as a replacement for Poppaea. Nero held a public wedding with Sporus, calling him Sabina, and appeared with him at public events, shocking and outraging the Roman populace, who saw this as evidence of his moral decay. In 68 AD, Gaius Julius Vindex, governor of Gallia Lugdunensis, rebelled against Nero, declaring him a tyrant and rallying support for a new emperor, Galba, the governor of Hispania Tarraconensis. Vindex's revolt was swiftly crushed by loyal legions. But the spark of rebellion spread. The Praetorian Guard, once Nero's staunchest allies, turned against him. In June 68 AD, the Guard, bribed by Galba's supporters, declared Galba emperor. The Senate followed suit, proclaiming Nero a public enemy, death sentence for any Roman. Nero, abandoned by his allies, fled Rome in disguise, seeking refuge at a villa outside the city. On June 9, 68 AD, with soldiers closing in, Nero took his own life. His final words, according to Suetonius, were, "What an artist dies in me." Before committing suicide, Nero reportedly ordered the burning of his beloved lyre, unwilling to leave any trace of his artistic talent for his enemies. Nero's death, at the age of 30, marked the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, leaving Rome without a clear successor for the first time in nearly a century. Nero's death plunged Rome into chaos. The year 69 AD, known as the Year of the Four Emperors, saw Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and finally Vespasian vie for the throne in a bloody civil war. The Julio-Claudian dynasty, founded by Augustus, had ruled Rome for 95 years, but its end under Nero revealed the fragility of absolute power. Nero's reign, though marked by early promise, became a cautionary tale of excess, cruelty, and madness. He left behind a Rome scarred by fire, rebellion, and division, a Rome that would need new leaders to heal its wounds. But Nero's legacy also left a lasting mark. Structures like the Domus Aurea and Rome's new boulevards became inspirations for later emperors, such as Trajan and Hadrian, in their efforts to build grand public works to enhance their prestige. Nero's death closed the book on the Julio-Claudian dynasty, but opened a new era of turmoil for Rome. What would become of the empire in the chaotic year that followed? Let's reflect on Nero's legacy and look ahead to Rome's uncertain future. Nero's reign began with hope but ended in tragedy. The young emperor, once seen as the heir to Augustus's legacy, became Rome's most infamous ruler, a symbol of decadence and tyranny. His early years, guided by Seneca and Burrus, brought stability, but his descent into madness, the murders of Agrippina and Britannicus, the Great Fire of 64, the persecution of Christians, the extravagance of the Domus Aurea, and his brutality toward Poppaea and dissenters turned Rome against him. His passion for the arts, though intense, became a source of ridicule. From cheating his way to victory at the Greek Olympics to performing on public stages, Nero transformed the image of a Roman emperor from a warrior to an eccentric artist. His economic policies, such as debasing the currency, caused inflation and unrest, while his failure to manage the provinces from Boudicca's rebellion in Britannia to tensions with Parthia over Armenia revealed his weakness in governing the empire. The repeated conspiracies against him, from the minor plot in 56 AD to the Pisonian conspiracy and the schemes of Faenius Rufus, were evidence of widespread discontent among the nobility and military. Nero's relationship with the lower classes, initially positive thanks to his festivals and generosity, collapsed by the end of his reign as they realized his extravagance only worsened their lives, particularly after the Great Fire and his failed economic policies. Culturally, Nero left a complex legacy. He laid the groundwork for the development of art and theater in Rome, influencing later emperors like Domitian, who also held similar artistic festivals. But at the same time, his image as an emperor-artist became a cautionary tale, prompting future emperors like Vespasian and Trajan to focus more on projecting the image of a strong military and political leader. The greatest impact of Nero's reign may lie in the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. His death ushered in a period of chaos, teaching later emperors that their power depended on the support of the military and the Senate, a lesson Vespasian applied to build a more stable Flavian dynasty. By 68 AD, Nero's extravagance and cruelty had sparked rebellion, leading to his downfall and the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. But Nero's story leaves us with unanswered questions. Did he truly start the Great Fire? Or was he a scapegoat for Rome's suffering? Could the dynasty have been saved, or was its decline inevitable after Caligula and Claudius? And what of Rome's future? The year of the four emperors looms on the horizon, a period of civil war that will test the empire's resilience. Will Rome rise from the ashes, or will it fall deeper into chaos? Share your thoughts in the comments. Was Nero a misunderstood artist, or a tyrant who deserved his fate? Don't forget to subscribe to follow our journey through ancient Rome.